All right, welcome back, boys and girls. So what we're looking at, I can't remember where I left off. I think I was doing something with the turbo tubing or piping or whatever. But the time has finally come. We're going to ditch this old piece of shit engine for a number of reasons. Not because I blew it up, because I didn't. It's actually been pretty good, but it's blowing oil out of every which way. I'll show you in a second. Probably as a result of plugging the crankcase ventilation, we blew the valve cover seal and whichever other seal, so it's just raining oil all off of the block and off the transmission and all over the place. So there's not much point, as far as I see, not much point in tracking that down and fixing it, because I'm going to put in a new motor anyways. So that time has finally come. So I'm going to start doing that now. As you can see, we got a pretty significant upgrade to the shop. A bigger shop with a lift and lots of tools and everything. Costs a lot of money. So what we'll do is we'll lift it up and have a look underneath what we're dealing with. All right, and for those of you who are curious, this lift is a 9KOH. It's about the cheapest lift you can find, because I'm about the cheapest person you can find. Let's tilt this thing up in a way that, oops. Anyway, so yeah, there's just fucking oil everywhere. And I could fix that, but again, we're gonna take this motor out anyways. It is like just, so when I start the car, it just fumes me out, man. I just can't tolerate it. I can't even drive. I get all lightheaded and shit. Makes me even dumber than I was to begin with. So what I'll do first, we'll disconnect these ball joints, basically disconnect the wheel so I can get the axles out. This whole pink frame, I had spray painted it and it would immediately become stained with oil and shit. So I think I'm gonna just have this whole pink frame painted with bed liner or something, I don't know. But I'm gonna alter it in any case. But it's pretty free of rust, so it's in good shape. So take off the ball joints, and then remove these 4 bolts that hold that subframe in. Then that will basically be dangling from the engine mounts. Then lower the whole car. Disconnect the other bits, support this subframe from underneath with a pallet or a floor jack or whatever. Put the car back down, disconnect all the other bits, engine mounts and so on. Then I will lift the car back up with the engine not attached, hopefully without forgetting too many disconnecty things, and then the car goes up in the air and the engine and subframe and handful of other components stay on the floor. At least that's the idea. So what we're going to do is I'll just do a time lapse. I'll do the ball joints, get the wheels off, get the ball joints separated, maybe. I don't know how much of a fight they're going to want to put up. But I mean, I put them in fairly freshly. I mean, this car's just been sitting. It's really not been driven at all. And so I'll just do a time lapse of that. So I'll probably just get the wheels and ball joints off, and then I'll take a break. But it won't be much of a break for you, because it'll just be a time lapse into the next thing. So probably you'll just see my clothes change. Or if I'm a dirty bastard, my clothes won't change, and it'll be the next day or the next week or whatever. Okay, so we got the motor out. Motor and trans together, assembled to the subframe. So In the case of this car, which is an '02 Civic, an EM2 chassis, which is very, very similar, and for most intents and purposes the same as a Acura RSX, a DC5 chassis. So Acura DC5 or Acura Honda DC5 and Honda EM2 chassis are very, very similar. So a couple ways to do that. You can pluck the motor out with a cherry picker or a hoist like I used, or you can sort of, if you're willing to disassemble part of the suspension, you can just drop the whole assembly, drop the subframe. Obviously not really as feasible to assemble it that way, but dropping the motor out, that works pretty well, I've found. And I've taken a handful of these apart. I haven't put too many of them together, but I've taken a bunch of them apart. So, I mean, not too much to point out in here. My motor mount on the passenger side is, well, homemade. I mean, it's functional. It's made out of if I'm not mistaken, 1/4-inch mild steel with some somewhat boogery welds. I didn't do those welds, so there's a couple other excuses I have to make about these motor mounts, but I'll leave it at that for now. So there's a redesign on that passenger side engine mount is in order. Well, this is my first or second try. So this is just a bracket that I had made. I'm not sure if that light helps or not. That I basically designed the sort of D shape that I needed, or that I thought that I needed, or whatever. Put a little sleeve in here and bought some, I wonder if I have it still around somewhere. I think it's called Polytech. It's from some outfit out of Pennsylvania. It's like Harrisburg or Philadelphia or something. Polyurethane resin. So basically you mix the resin with the hardener, pour it in there, and boom, you have and I think different mixtures of the hardener are going to give you a different durometer. There's a bunch of threads online. I can't remember what durometer I was going for, but in any case, you can kind of mess with it and get something that'll work for you. That was really, I'm trying not to get down the rabbit hole on these motor mounts, but that's really cool. So it's not quite right yet, but it's close. Then the other side, I just have some bullshit rigged up. And so basically what I'll plan to do is I'll drill another hole in the firewall for my wiring and stuff. I had used the factory, I guess you call it pass-through, for the engine loom for all my other doodads, like O2 sensor, oil pressure, radiator fan switch, boost control, stuff like that. Passed it through there, and that's kind of it presented itself as a real pain in the neck when it came time to drop in the motor, and like it wasn't part of some of these components were not part of the engine loom, so I had to basically separate those out, and it would just be a lot more clean and convenient to have a separate pass-through in the firewall. So I'll do that, and I'll power wash all this stuff, because it's a grimy mess. But as you can see, I mean, there's no corrosion, really nothing we're talking about. This car is a pretty clean example. And the other thing I got to do is I'll clean up some of this fuel routing. A lot of this stuff was done after the engine was already in, so it's kind of routed in a convenient way rather than, let's say, a sensible way. So I'll update the fuel, the routing of those fuel lines, which basically looks retarded. I mean, there's no real better way to describe it. It just looks retarded. And a couple other things. Way easier with a lift. Man, that's so easy with a lift. Because you can just, not only the actual logistics of moving the engine, moving the components out and away from each other, but also you forget something, you don't have to get down on the floor and try and get at things from underneath. Because if you've ever seen or done a job like this with only jack stands, right? You got to get the car up real high enough in this case, if you're dropping it out the bottom, high enough where you can drag the assembly out from underneath the car, but not so high that you can't reach it with the hoist or however you're doing it. I mean, you probably don't need a hoist to do a job like this. You can probably get away without it and just use like a floor jack and a pallet or something. But the hoist makes it a lot easier to just get the load off of the mounts, then disassemble or disconnect the engine mounts, and then just drop it onto the floor. I just used a simple sort of moving dolly. So let's take a look at what we got. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into too much detail. It's covered in oil, and that's part of what my complaint was. I think it's mostly coming from the valve cover, and I think it's partly because of having that CCV line blocked, and it just blew out part of the seal, or maybe not, but I mean, it's just, I mean, see for yourself, it's just the whole fucking engine is just covered in oil. And so as soon as you start the engine, like as soon as you get any heat into that exhaust manifold, it just starts burning the oil, and it's annoying. It burns all kinds of oil, not just midnight oil, all kinds. Engine oil. This is a 6-speed transmission out of a 03 Acura RSX Type S. I chose to go with this transmission, or run this one for a while, because it's not very suitable for higher horsepower. This transmission, in comparison with the base model RSX counterpart, they have the same final drive, they have the same fifth gear. I think first gears are the same. Excuse me, not fifth, final gear, top gear. Top gear is the same. 6th gear in this transmission is the same ratio as 5th gear in the 5-speed. So they're just shorter gears in between. You got an extra gear, and they're all closer. They're all closer together. So that works well with a high revving, sort of lower power engine. But if you have tons of power, there's no reason to be jumping between gears that are so damn close together. At least that's the philosophy. It's my philosophy anyway. Fuel manifold. So that fuel rail. Let's get a look here. Apologies if this light isn't helping. In my mind, it's helpful. That's just an eBay cheapo rail that I welded. What is it? Probably a -6 on the end of it. And that is, I would say it's the worst weld anybody's ever seen, but it doesn't leak. Some of this aluminum material, even if you're, well, I would say I'm reasonably capable as a home gamer in terms of welding aluminum. And let's see, I don't have any other pieces around where I can show you, but just take my word for it. I'm not as bad as that weld looks. So some of these cast aluminum pieces, once you start melting it, all kind of fucking shit comes out. So if you're welding cast aluminum, it's usually going to turn out to be a fucking mess. Not every time, but a lot of the time. I'll show you a couple examples after I'm done. This is kind of, I was here before, this is kind of all the machinery. If you saw in previous videos, that's the manifold that I made. This down tube is partly modified. I partly modified this down tube, but it looks good. Everything looks good, and it sort of works good. The only major concern with this manifold is the flange. Is that flange just got super fucking warped, and it was just not flat. But when it's all clamped up, it doesn't leak. At least I can't hear it. If it's leaking, it's not leaking much, and I can't hear it. So I think I'm just gonna go with it. If it turns out to be a problem, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, because I think that the manifold is otherwise not too bad. Things got a little hairy when I got close to that collector, because then you have to actually be good at welding to get into some of those crotches. but I mean, you can kind of see in there. I mean, it could be worse. So if worst comes to worst with that, if I have issues with that flange, I don't know. Maybe I'll try and get another flange and sort of weld another flange on top of that, so you have a super thick flange, and then machine, so there's more material to machine away. Well, right now it's not giving me too many problems, or at least no problems that I can observe. So so far so good. This subframe, this pink subframe, is obviously, it's all covered in oil and shit. I had just spray painted it pink like all those other fucking stupid pink parts. What I'm thinking I'm gonna do is, because is to sandblast it and repaint it, because spray paint just doesn't work. I'll use it on occasion nowadays, but like, it stains so easily, and it's just not right. It's not actually sealed. Anyway, so I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. Thinking about doing like a bed liner kind of thing. So I'll either sandblast it and do bed liner, or some kind of automotive paint, or some kind of perhaps Duracoat. I'm not real crazy about Duracoat because it's super expensive. I'll do it on smaller parts, but it's fucking expensive, dude, and I'm a cheap bastard. Okay, I think that's all we got there. Let's have a look at what's going in real quick. That's a K20A2. It's not too beautiful looking, but it runs, or at least last I checked, it runs. It came out of an 03. I bought that 03, I don't know, several years ago. Drove it home, took it apart. Compression's good. Compression was whatever, 210. I don't think there was much. I have it recorded somewhere. And there's sort of better aluminum welds. And I don't know. I mean, that's a cast valve cover too. So I'll give myself some grace there. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. I'll take some of the bits off. Like, I think that I have a new starter motor and a new alternator on the engine you just saw. So I'll probably use those. I have an upgraded clutch in the other car, or in the other motor. It's probably, I can't remember exactly which one, but it's about the strongest, or the most, can handle the most torque for a single disc clutch that I could find for this engine. So if I need a clutch to hold more, in short, if I need a clutch to hold more torque, it looks like I got to go with a twin disc, which I can do. Yeah, but if I don't have to, I don't know. I think this clutch will hold something like 250 pound-feet, or maybe like 300, or maybe those are Newton meters or something. But it'll be borderline. It'll be close. My intention is to get 450 out of this engine. I don't know. There's guys making 550 every day out of a stock K20A2, which is what this is. So yeah, I'm thinking I can be a little bit more conservative, be in the neighborhood of 400. Not sure what kind of boost pressures that's going to take, but anyway, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking 20-25% less of what we know these engines are capable of, and we'll just go from there. All right, I think that's all I got now. Yeah, cool. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.